The meeting of the Gilroy Unified School District Board of Education will now come to order.
¿Hay alguien aquí que necesite intérprete para esta junta? Okay, gracias. Thank you.
Okay. So this evening, we have students sitting in the front row here who are from Brownell, and they're going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And we have Mrs. Summers and Mrs. Mackay will be introducing them. Mr. Laborante was not able to be here this evening, so we can go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Sabrina Smollen, and I am the ASB coordinator at Brownell Middle School, and I am here with my fellow ASB and CJSF students to lead you in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. First up is Ben Anderson, Jacob Muncie, Athena Rutman, Vikash Sabharwal, Vance Koo.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, this evening we have several recognitions, so we're going to proceed with that.
And our wellness award is first. I'm going to come over also.
Good evening. My name is Kara Scalizia. I'm with food service here in the district, and I'm joined by Nolani Battaglia, also food service.
And Sylvia Solis, Specialized Programs Administrator.
For this Spring Health and Wellness Award, we are excited to present a wellness recognition to Adalith Gomez, Community Liaison and Health Clerk at Elliott Elementary School. Adalith is described as the most valuable member of Elliott in health and wellness for everyone whose lives she touches. She always provides a kind word or face, a sense of belonging, or the knowledge that someone loves and cares about them. She will do anything that is intended to help the families and students she serves and the families who have expressed a need to her. Whether that is being somewhere at 4:30 in the morning, taking food to people who are doing things after hours, Adalith never says no to anything. She offers to help staff members. She supports the food distribution that occurs every month on campus. She reaches out to community organizations to support activities for the students and is an integral part of the Tier 1 and Tier 2 PBIS teams at Elliott. Congratulations and thank you to Adalith for promoting the components of health and dental education, nutrition services, health services, a safe and healthy school environment, parent and community involvement, and health promotion for staff.
And unfortunately, Adalith was unable to be here today due to unexpected life situations, but I would like to invite Mr. Riley McBride, who will receive the award on her behalf and deliver it to her.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll add her in the picture.
Thank you.
Photoshop already? She's about your height, right? Yeah, about.
the next part of the program is we want to recognize some very special students for their community service. And the first thing I have to tell you is we planned this tonight without checking to see when the senior field trips were. And of course, guess what? Christopher High and Gilroy High students are at Magic Mountain tonight, I believe. So we can't recognize the two groups. But most of us were at the senior awards ceremonies, so we got a chance to see the students we would have been recognizing this evening. So students that had earned double the requirement of 80 hours or more. We were so impressed with the number of hours many of these students had earned. So we did get a chance to see them at the senior awards ceremonies. So tonight we have our Mount Madonna and our GECA students who are still around, and we'll be recognizing them. But I did want to say a few words about our community service requirement. We started this requirement a number of years ago, and it went into effect with the graduating class of 2014. The board instituted this requirement in an effort to instill our students with the value of community involvement and service to others. Community service hours provide students with the opportunity to contribute their efforts and talents on community issues as well as positive projects. They enhance the quality of life in our communities with their commitment to the betterment of the community. So every student in the district must complete the 80 hours to graduate, and I believe we'll have an update tonight. When we prepared the report, it didn't look as good as I think it does tonight. I think we have a lot more students that have completed those 80 hours. Some wait literally to the last month or two. I don't know why they do that, because you have 4 years to complete this requirement. But anyway, that's the nature of teenagers, I guess. But anyway, students that double this requirement and earn 160 hours or more are honored at their graduation ceremonies with a special green cord that they wear along with their cap and gown. And those were presented at the two comprehensive high school senior awards ceremonies. With the success of the program over the last several years, the district decided last year to begin honoring the top 5% of students who earn the most community service hours from the graduating class of each of the 4 school sites for this special board recognition this evening. We'll still try to have the other students come on June 15th, but I don't know how many of them are still going to be around. Anyway, the individual student with the highest number of community service hours at each school site has had their name engraved on a perpetual plaque that is displayed prominently at each of our high schools. While many of the students we are honoring tonight, as I mentioned, couldn't be here tonight, the board and I wanted to take this opportunity to share the incredible accomplishments of this incredible group of students. All right, so before we honor our students, I want to acknowledge some very important people who contribute significantly to the success of this program, and that's our community service coordinators. I don't envy them. Having been through this for 4 years with a student who luckily doubled it last year was recognized, it's a real chore getting students to turn in their hours. A lot of them are doing the hours, they just don't turn them in. So the people that we have to thank for making this happen is Jamie Reynolds from Gilroy High. Is Jamie here? I don't know if they came tonight. Oh, don't remind us. Gloria Hennessy from Christopher High, Carmina Salgado from Mount Madonna High School, and Elizabeth Barron from GECA. Because without the 4 of them, this program would never have happened. It takes a huge amount of time and effort and just absolute persistence to make sure our students get their hours in. So we're going to recognize the students who who are here, who are in the top 5% of community service hours. So for those students that were able to attend tonight, please come forward. Mount Madonna's top students are Michaela Mariquin, Samantha Aguilar Hurtado, Wendy Mendoza Perez, Flor Ortega, Stacy Gutierrez. GECA's top students are Brian Nguyen and Shirley Howe. And I don't believe any of the Gilroy and Christopher kids are here. They're at Magic Mountain.
Where are their priorities?
Really. And I don't blame them. And So you have the certificates, right? Great. So go ahead. You- And students, we want to thank you all for your hard work and your dedication in completing these hours. I heard at all those ceremonies, students had completed 300, 400, 500 hours of community service. That is truly remarkable. So we really appreciate it. Congratulations, and we expect great things in the future.
If my memory is correct, I believe there was a student at Christopher who had over 1,100 hours.
Yeah, no kidding. I can't remember.
It was incredible.
Yes, you're right. It's great. Great. Thank you for coming. Is that in my notes? Okay. So these are the two? Yes. Okay. So the top students from the two schools that were able to come this evening are Gecka, Raylene. Is she still here? Raylene, come on up. And I'll read the plaque. Congratulations, Raylene. Is the number of hours on here? No? You want to tell us how many? 571 hours. That's great. So the Gilroy Unified School District Board of Education proudly recognizes Raylene Miranda as the Community Service Champion of the Gilroy Early College Academy Class of 2017 for earning the most community service hours. Thank you for your contributions, commitment, and service to our community. Congratulations. We've seen you at so many events now. Congratulations and great job. Great. And thank you. Congratulations. And the Mount Madonna. And the student who had the most hours at Mount Madonna is Isaiah Alvarez. Congratulations. So Isaiah, we also have a plaque for you. The Gilroy Unified School District Board of Education proudly recognizes Isaiah Alvarez as the Community Service Champion of the Mount Madonna High School Class of 2017 for earning the most community service hours. Thank you for your contributions, commitment, and service to our community. Congratulations. Great job. And he completed 448 hours. Sure. Can we get a picture posted? Sure. So you want Miranda to come back up? Cool. Great. You just want the two of them? Fantastic. Yeah. Oh. I just take my direction from them. That's wonderful. Great. Good job. Thanks. Thanks. Oh, wow, I didn't realize you had them here. So here's an example of the perpetual plaque that hangs at each, and this was a board member's idea. So anyway, it hangs at the school, and each year we'll add the person with the highest number of community service hours. So we have them all four here, right? Oh, sure, since they're not here. Okay. So Gilroy High's 2017 is Desmond Hernandez with 658 and a half hours. How do they do that? And Christopher is Esteban Rubio, this is one you remembered, with 1,105.25 hours. They get really serious about this. Really cool. And Diane, cool. Great. Paul and Marco, great. Thank you. Thanks to all 4 principals for being here. It's great. We have one other recognition this evening. I'm doing this. I have one more recognition. I have 2 more? Yes. Oh, okay. All right. So tonight, yes, we have 2 more recognitions. All right. So what we want tonight, we'd like to recognize Luisa Mantilla for being the student representative for Region 5 National Bilingual Multicultural Learner Advocacy. This was shared with me a while ago, and it was just so exciting, we decided we would recognize her tonight. So we mentioned the program at last month's board meeting. As a refresher, the National Bilingual Multilingual Learner Advocacy Month, Region 5 County Offices of Education honored districts that have adopted a board policy or a resolution that supports the Pathway or Seal of Biliteracy Award. GUSD, along with other districts, were recognized on April 27th at the County Office of Ed. As part of the Region 5 showcase, the district was asked to participate by the county office with students who were willing to be guest speakers. Luisa was one of 2 students that spoke at the event. Luisa has been in the dual immersion program at all 3 levels, elementary, middle, and high. She is currently an 11th grader at Gilroy High School. We would like to share a brief segment of the speech she gave, which highlights the positive impact the program has had on her life. So we're going to play that now. Yep. Go ahead. The speech was about, what, 5 minutes?
3 minutes.
3 minutes. So we're not going to play the whole thing, but we're going to play a piece of it.
South Valley continued the bilingual path at Gilroy High School. By this time, I got to know all of the dual immersionist students closely, and this was the main reason for my effortless transition from middle school to high school. Upon entering high school, I also joined the biomedical program. One of the courses offered sophomore year was biotechnology in Spanish. To most students, including myself, just the title of this class terrified us. But looking closely and realizing that we all had the class during the same period, and knowing that we would be together relieved us. For me, this is considered one of my biggest dual immersion milestones, as this class greatly challenged me. This course load was heavy and the material was completely in Spanish. But as the year was coming to an end, I was able to navigate easily through the content, sometimes not realizing which language I was using for my thinking or studying. The result of this class was a boost of confidence in knowing that I passed this class with an A. I proved to myself that I am truly bilingual and I can conquer any goal that I set for myself. Another challenge that I recently took on a few months ago is the creation of a student-run tutoring program to help English language learners. I had the idea of creating this tutoring program to have a way for dual immersion students to use the skills that they have acquired through the years to teach other students who might need the extra help. This program is to start in May and to continue through next year. I hope to create an outlet for dual immersion students to truly show the knowledge and confidence that the dual immersion program has provided for them and for myself. Thank you.
Anyway, Luisa, thank you for representing the district and being one of only 2 student speakers. That's really remarkable, and it makes us very proud because we're so proud of this program anyway, but to have a student showcase the talent and the ability and the skills that result from being in the dual immersion program is really great. So thank you so much for representing us. And we have, is it on the bottom? I know there's people who have been involved in your education in the audience, and we want to really thank them too. But great job, and the fact that you're in BSA also is just amazing. It's an incredibly rigorous program. So we have a certificate for you, thanking you for representing the district and for sharing your dual immersion educational experience with many others. So thank you.
Thank you.
Very proud of you. Are your parents here? I figured that. Great. Great. We should get parents to come on up.
We want to thank Ms. Salcido too for helping us do this.
We'll kick her out right now. Dr. Flores, are you going to get it?
Sure.
Okay,
Great.
I'm out. Okay, Dr. Flores.
Great. Thanks. All right, our last recognition. This was our board president, vice president really wanted to do this evening. I thought it was a great idea. So tonight we'd like to express our sincere appreciation and commitment to two of our three board representatives, student board reps who could be here this evening. The other one, Lexi, understandably, is on the field trip. We understand that. So these students who serve as student board reps put in an amazing amount of hard work and effort throughout the school year. They have provided updates, information, and current events about what's occurring not only at their schools, but at elementary schools as well. They've learned how our government process works and what's involved in public service. They've taken on this added responsibility along with their studies, extracurricular activities, and community involvement. To be able to accomplish and participate in all the ventures is no easy feat, and we realize this. Each of you have done an amazing job, and we're grateful to see how you've grown in this position. And it's our hope that your service as a board representative will serve you well in all aspects of your life, including your educational journey while you're still in high school and in college. So we'd like to present each of you with a trophy in recognition and with sincere appreciation for your commitment and service to the district. So we'd like to ask Sloan Pace, and who else do we have here tonight? Virginia Diaz. Good. Oh, I like the wording. You did a great job on these. Cool, Virginia. Thank you. What it says is beyond awesome.
Congratulations. Thank you for your service.
And both of you did a
Thank you for
great
your
job.
service.
You're a hard act to follow, of course. Great job. All right, so we have a picture.
I know.
Try to get all of this.
Can you get us all in? We have to,
Heather, you can scooch in a foot.
we have to act like we like each other?
You need Jaime.
I know, yeah, we need Jaime.
You don't want to strike a pose like Virginia?
We're not that awesome.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. You guys did a great job. Thank you. You did a great job. Oh, you want a picture with two? Great. Did you plan your outfits in advance? We did. Did you both have a white? So that concludes our recognitions.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Item 3D is general public comment. We do have some people who would like to speak tonight.
We have two people, and a reminder, you have 3 minutes each, and I'm the timer. The first one is Dana Wolf.
Good evening. The purpose of me speaking tonight is to hopefully open up a conversation which hasn't been allowed in the past. What is the product of GATE? How many staff and students benefit from the self-contained GATE program? 3 teachers benefit from smaller class sizes and a handful of students compared to the entire population. Why was the program expanded to one of the middle schools? A handful of parents compared to the rest of the population wanted it to, including the superintendent whose son was promoting to middle school. Dr. Flores once said, "This community wants GATE, it is here to stay." Well, part of Welborn Avenue was closed because a handful of citizens wanted it for their personal benefit. Now that decision has been reversed, it is not best for all citizens. Why did the acceptance qualifications changed often, and why is there not transparency in viewing of the scores, even when I as a teacher have requested it? The program has always been unsustainable without backfilling and exceptions being made for individual students. Why has there never been a GATE combination class? About 4 years ago, there was going to be one. However, by the end of the week, the decision was reversed as the 3 GATE teachers rallied parents to protest. Why are Ms. Newick, Ms. Lerner, and myself no longer teaching 2nd grade at Rutgers School? Ms. Newick spoke about inequality in regards to GATE at a board meeting. I wrote a letter in 2007 and again in 2015 expressing my concerns about the inequity of the admittance process. In the spring of 2015, Ms. Anderson told me that it was decided that you should no longer be the gatekeepers of GATE. Final question, why did the voices of a few, all of who gain personally from maintaining an unsustainable and unequitable program, carry more weight than the voices of teachers like myself who just want what is best for all students? I will end with a few quotes that have been said to me without solicitation. If anyone says anything about GATE, they will be written up. The teacher who said this to me is willing to explain further if needed. GATE is just a big social group for parents. That's another individual. We don't feel like we can say anything as we saw what happened to you guys. What a powerful entity and for what end product. Thank you.
And the second speaker tonight is Amber Woodward.
Good evening. Today we are here to say thank you. GTA has appointed us to speak on behalf of our colleagues. GTA knows the amount of work and effort the board puts into ensuring the success of our students. As the largest employer in Gilroy, we truly appreciate you. The board, making the benefits package more attractive to both current and incoming staff. It is obvious you know the importance of retaining qualified, dedicated employees. This increase in benefits is a significant step in the right direction. GTA looks forward to working with you in the 2017-2018 school year to continue to develop an environment in which students can thrive and employees are valued. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our general public comment. Item 3E, report of action taken in closed session. We had two items in closed session. Number one, removal, suspension, expulsion of a student. This is case number 2017-15. At this time, I will entertain a motion.
I would move to expel.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. The second action was readmission of a student to schools maintained by the district. This is case 2017-05. And we had 6 yeses and 1 abstained vote by BC Doyle. Okay, the superintendent's report is the next item on the agenda.
Thank you. I continued site visits to El Roble and to Antonio Del Bono. Mr. Pace joined me yesterday at ADB. And one thing I wanted to comment on both sites is it was just great to see so much teaching and learning going on at the end of the year. You would never know we're a week or two away from the end of the year. The teachers were teaching interesting, standards-based lessons, and the students were very engaged in every classroom that we went in, and that was great to see that this was happening even this late in the school year. And I know it's hard to keep students interested this late in the school year. So I want to applaud the teachers at both. And, you know, had some really good discussion with the principals about just current issues that are happening in our district and at our sites. And it's always great to walk around to classrooms and be reminded of why we're all here. You know, this is why we're here, is for the students in our district. We had a bunch of meetings this month. I'll just highlight our facilities subcommittee. We're gearing up for a lot of summer work. We've got a bunch of projects going on, particularly at Gilroy High this summer, with a major parking lot renovation, solar project, and we're beginning the 2-story wing. We'll also have a solar project at Christopher and at Solar Sano, and where else is the solar project? Not Solar Sano, just those two this summer. Okay, so this summer we're doing the 2 high schools. We have a very active group planning for our new elementary school and meeting just about every 2 weeks. And we're seeing some designs, potential designs for the new school. And we had a very interesting meeting with our representative, John Murray, from Advanced Path. They've been bought out, essentially, Advanced Path, by another company called Graduation Alliance. And I felt really good after our meeting. I think our goals are aligned with the new company, that Advanced Path will continue to function the way it is, which we very much support, the way the program's currently operating. And I believe we have the CEO here this evening who we'll introduce later when we get to the item. But had a very good meeting with representatives of both companies. And we heard some things that will be new for us that we may want to pursue, that may be very beneficial for our students. There were a number of special events this month. A Rotary Scholarship presentation where many students received scholarships. A food services recognition dinner last night, first ever. Sodexo and our food service staff and along with Kim and Alvaro, and I think several cabinet members were there, recognizing food service employees who had perfect attendance for the second half of the year, I believe it was. So we wanted to recognize them. So it was a wonderful dinner last night. And of course, it's that time of year where graduations have started. So last Thursday night, we attended the GECA graduation, which was a great event. And last night, was it last night or Tuesday night, the adult ed graduation. Always a very moving graduation because of the life experiences that the student speakers share with us. And then after we went to the adult ed graduation and then moved over to the gym at Gilroy High for the dual immersion promotion ceremony, which has become very big. We barely fit in the gym. There must have been 1,000 people there. So that the dual immersion promotion ceremony is where we honor students that are going from fifth to sixth, and eighth to high school. And then, how many did we have that were graduating from the program? A dozen. And that number, of course, is going to get bigger and bigger now that we have more and more students moving into the middle school and high school dual immersion programs. Of course, this is the busiest time of the year for us, so I want to remind everyone, especially the public, and you can see it on your screen, we have next week, 3 nights in a row, we'll be attending our 3 middle school promotions and our high school graduations. So as you can see the schedule, it actually starts tomorrow night with Mount Madonna. And then next week for 3 evenings, we'll be at the middle school promotions and the Gilroy High and Christopher High graduation. It's a great time of the year. We love it. It's busy, but it's well worth it, especially at the high school graduations, to see sort of the end product of all our efforts to prepare our students for whatever they decide to do after high school. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And on behalf of the board, I'd like to thank Gina for keeping us in line. Where are we supposed to be and what night and what time? And she does a great job of doing that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Gets a little hectic. Okay, we have a very big board packet this week, but a lot of it is under consent agenda because it's renewals of contracts.
And I'll
Things that we
just,
do once a
I'll
year.
just remind the board that I started this, my second or third year in the district, that I actually require staff to bring all their MOUs, agreements, contracts to the 2 June board meetings, so they're in effect when the school year starts. So you'll see, I believe, the student services contracts will be on the next agenda. So by the end of June, you'll see almost every contract, MOU, agreement that we need to have in place for the start of the school year.
Okay, so actually the consent agenda is in 3 parts, section 5 and 6 and 7, but I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
All 3?
Yeah,
So-
unless you want to pull something.
No,
and-
no, I would move to approve all items on the consent agenda, 5, 6, and 7. And 8.
And 8,
There's 4 sections, I guess.
right. Because this is divided into human resources, business, educational services, and student services. So, we have a motion, and do I have a second for that?
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second. Are there any questions or any board members that want to pull anything or for consideration? Okay, so the motion stands as it is. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes unanimously for the consent agenda 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then we'll move into the public hearing. We have a public hearing this evening. Public hearing on the local control accountability plan.
So we are here simply to open up the public hearing on behalf of President Midgard, Superintendent, and trustees. This is the time for our public to come up and make any comments about the draft of the LCAP proposal that was presented at the last board meeting. And this will come back one more time to the next board meeting.
Board members, questions? I have to open the public hearing first. Excuse me. Anybody from the public that wants to address us at this time regarding the LCAP? Local Control Accountability Plan? Okay, hearing none, the public hearing is closed.
Thank you.
Okay, moving to item 9B. We have the preliminary budget, and our Assistant Superintendent, Alvaro Mesa, will lead the discussion on the proposed 2017-2018 budget.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening, Board. Good evening, Superintendent, and members of the public. I do have a short presentation here as part of the public hearing. just to provide information. And obviously, it ties into the LCAP because it has to be, the priorities of the budget has to be mirroring the LCAP. As you know, the state budget development process is far from being final. The Assembly and the Senate are still deliberating with the governor, looking at how big the pie is, meaning the Prop 98, the funding level, and key elements of Prop 98, the ongoing funding elements as well as the one-time funding elements. And they're basically 90% of the way in agreement in terms of the big stuff, the ongoing elements of the Prop 98. I think all three parties, the governor, the Assembly, and the Senate, are at $74.6 billion in terms of the size of the budget. How is going to basically decide what the ultimate outcome will be. As you know, the budget bill has to be signed and enacted into law by the governor. And often is really the trailer bills that are often available to us until July that really give us the parameters and our marching orders in terms of the specifics that we need in terms of revising our budget. So often we take what we know now based on the May revision. We build our budget based on that information, and that's what you're here today to see is all the budget that we have, the preliminary information that we have available to us, but it's really based on the governor's May revision. And so even though the budget, we suspect, will be enacted into law by June 15th, really the trailer bills, because they're multiple bills with specific informations, really won't be available until July. So the key things that we look for is two things, the ongoing elements and the one-time funding things that will ultimately impact our district. And so the ongoing piece of the state budget is really the gap funding, they call it. And that, I think both parties, the Assembly and the Senate, are fairly close. The governor has budgeted that at $1.4 billion. What does that huge number mean to us? $2.4 million in terms of ongoing revenue. Now, the one thing that we've kept out of our budget, even our preliminary budget, and you won't see that in your June 15 budget for action, is the one-time allocation. The governor has scored a $1.1 billion allocation into 17-18 fiscal year, but he has not and will not allocate it until the following fiscal year of May 2019. If and only if state revenues come in aligned in terms of the Department of Finance expectations and projections. So therefore, we don't have any confidence that we can budget that at this stage of the game. It's just too early. The volatility of capital tax gains will remain there, and it's just uncertain at this point. So we're going with zero, budgeting nothing in terms of one-time revenue. That will be one of the things that you should look for in terms of our revised budget when we do bring you that. When we close our books, we'll have that carryover, we'll have that one-time revenues if it's in there, and we'll budget that accordingly. Obviously, the budget is aligned with the LCAP. And you have copies of the actual SACS documents, which obviously include the general fund and all other funds as well. But it is aligned to the LCAP, and we've had $270,000 to put towards the targeted student population, the English language learners, foster youth, and low-income students for the purpose of the minimum proportionality percentage calculation that's required. Total revenues, I won't spend too much time obviously on pie charts, but the highlight here is Prop 30 is winding down, and Prop 55 approved by the initiative by voters isn't going to kick in until January 1 of 2018. So there will be a chart, a graph, a line graph in subsequent slides that'll make this crystal clear. And what this pie chart is, more so than just a graphical picture of our total revenues and the breakout of that, is that if the state there's three elements, key elements, the blue, the red, and the yellow. If property taxes hold their value, fine. Prop 30 was there to basically help the state meet their obligation. That's the rest of the blue chart. In the housing market collapse, remember several years ago, the house market collapse, obviously that impacted property tax values, and we had a lot of short sales and a lot of foreclosed homes that essentially shifted the obligation to the state. The state was in economic crisis. They had no revenue to backfill for school districts, and therefore we had substantial amounts of cuts. So that's how it works. There's no free lunch. So in an economy that's weakening, you'll see different areas of obviously of the economy getting impacted. But for us, we care about the state and property taxes and that slice, Prop 30 and subsequently Prop 55. So we're keeping an eye on those three key variables. So total expenses, obviously if you add them up, you get 81%. This is the total general fund, so it does include state grants and federal grants included in there. If you just slice and look at the unrestricted share of the general fund, that percentage goes to 86%. Why so high? We have the ongoing revenue, ongoing expenses. There's no carryover. There's no one-time revenue. There's just really as clean as can be in terms of that percentage being there. So a lot of folks look at that percentage, but I think what we look at is the source of the reserves, and you look at the unrestricted general fund, and then you take that percentage, and we're at 86% unrestricted in terms of what salary and benefits are relative to the total unrestricted expenses. And that's a key fact, because the rest of it, we have to pay our lights, we have to pay utilities, services, just about everything else has to come from the rest. This is a new pie chart, if you will, but it's not complicated. It's pretty simple. It's just the base grant in terms of the supplemental and concentration. It's just graphical. So it just says, hey, over 55% unduplicated count, we get that 2% level of concentration funding. That's $1.4 million above. So as long as we're above 55%, we get that added bonus for that targeted group, and we're supposed to spend it on them. So that's why it's highlighted there on the budget. This is also a new one, but it's not complicated, although it looks scary to some folks. The axis on the left is just the total per ADA on an annual basis, all the way from the beginning of the school year through P2, that's mid-April, right? That's what we get funded on average daily attendance. So in 2012 to 2013, we've got $6,180 per student. And you can see the implementation of LCFF really taking that blue chart, blue line, up and increases. Between 14, 15, and 15, 16, we had a huge increase there of $1,000 per student. And so that's when we started cautioning us, and I know you heard me loud and clear, is we can't spend under the assumption that that slope is going to be there forever. We can't set our expenditure patterns and anticipate that revenue stream to continue. And so that's really why I highlighted the then second line is the green line, where you can see it tails off here at the end in 17, 18, right around here. So this is our new reality. So the governor has basically gotten LCFF to 97% of the target. Remember, the new implementation of the local control funding formula, LCFF, said, I'm going to get you to year 2020 and make sure that your purchasing power in 07, 08 gets to be basically adjusted until year 2020. So all those cuts that we took will repay you back, school districts, will make you whole. So your purchasing power in 07, 08 will be restored by year 2020, as if 07, 08 was a great year, right? But anyway, the point of this graph is to show that the new increases are going to be basically ranging between $200 to $300 per student. And that's key, so because it keeps us grounded in terms of the amount of new revenue that we're anticipating. And here's the line graph on just the Education Protection Act revenue, so Prop 30 and then now Prop 55, but until January 1, 2018, right? So what this shows is the projections from the Department of Finance. These aren't mine, and the actuals from the prior years. So you can see it hit a peak of 15 million. So that's actually very valuable to the state because it's 15 million less that the state had to give us for Gilroy Unified. So multiply that thousands of thousand districts, and it's relief to the state. When that's a lower amount, like $2.4, $2.1 million, as we project here from the Department of Finance, that puts more pressure on the state, more pressure on local property taxes to then make the state whole. So if property taxes just stay flat or, of course, stay stagnant in 2% levels or so, then that puts pressure, more pressure on the state to make us whole because the entitlement is the entitlement. So if they can't make it, then we have cuts, deferrals, and they start playing with 98, manipulating it, suppressing that Prop 98 minimum guarantee to give us less. So what's eroding our purchasing power? We talked about the promise that the governor made to education. I'll make you whole in 2020. Your purchasing power will be back in 07, 08 by then. Okay, well, is that true? The pension rates have gone up substantially. PERS used to be 13% 8% and change not too long ago. STRS used to be 8.25% on the employer side. And you can take a look at those. They're going all the way to 27% in the case of PERS. In the case of CalSTRS is 19%. These are employer-paid rates. We're required to pay every single percentage in terms of payroll. So for every dollar, we pay those percentages on top of that for eligible payroll. And that obviously has an ongoing cost in terms of our multi-year projection in terms of salary and benefits. This is, I think, an important line graph that keeps us grounded and keeps the governor accountable, if you will. The yellow line, the top part, is his promise. He said, we're going to give you 07, 08 purchasing power. You just have to wait till year 2020 to get there. Well, yes, and he's accelerated the pace, which we're all thankful for. LCFF has been implemented. The middle line shows the implementation line and actual and projected levels of actual funding. But when you adjust it for the pension, just the pensions, then that actual funding then becomes that red line, that dashed line, if you will. So what that means is we're not going to get there for the actual purchasing power that he promised. So he's falling short on his promise because he's not funding for those pension costs that we're all having to bear. And for Gilroy Unified, it's a $1.3 to $1.4 million annually that we'll have to add on every single year. So that's a net increase of $1.3, $1.4 million just to pay for the pensions, not district-directed changes. These are just pension rates because the investment pool isn't generating as enough, so the discounted rate in terms of their yield investment has decreased. We still have the same obligations, so the burden falls on the employer as well. Now, this is a local pressure that we have. Special education expenses, this is the total, not the contribution to the general fund, from the general fund. This is total expenses in the area of special ed, so it's both state, federal, and local, have gone up substantially every single year. And we're not alone in this area. It's a countywide problem, it's a statewide problem, and we're unfortunately learning of the administration on the federal side looking at even cuts to special ed and already underfunded programs. So that's very concerning to us. But the budget does increase the special ed contribution to $700,000 from last year to this year. So that's included in the budget. Multi-year assumptions, I'll share with you the actual numbers of the multi-year projection, but I just want to go through the highlights here. There's a couple of key differences that I want to highlight, where at this point I've had to, by year 2018-19 and 19-20, those subsequent 2 years, it's always been my parameters to go 50% of new revenues in the multi-year projection. I can't make that work anymore. We had to go up to 80% of the new revenues and 75% of the new revenues in 19-20 to be able to hit our 7% board minimum reserve. Why is that necessary? Because otherwise I fall short of that. And, you know, we could budget 100% like other districts. That is just not what I would recommend to you. And so what my comfort level is that's as high as I can go right now. And so we've had a couple of slides in here that'll deal with that uncertainty. I think it's the very last slide in terms of preparing for, you know, if this doesn't come to fruition, we have to have a backup plan. So we're prepared for that. But that's a key thing that I want to highlight for you, board. I've had 50% all along in the subsequent years at this point in time. I'm not able to do that without going below our reserve threshold. Also, as in the past, I've looked at the 57% unduplicated pupil count. So that's just to protect us from not meeting that 59% concentration and supplemental funding that we drive on. So because of the demographics, because of the new homes, the prices, these aren't low-income homes that are priced at $700,000 to $800,000. We have to be mindful of that percentage and not assume it's just going to stay at 59%. Obviously, if it stays or becomes higher for some reason, we can always recalibrate up, but it's harder to look at revenues and find a cut when you don't have to. So those are the main revenue assumption changes. The expenditure assumptions are usual. I want to highlight some notable absences that are out from the expenses. the $950,000 one-time expense, if you will, rollover budget for equipment replacement line. We had it once. This current budget, it's out, and it's been out. For a couple of MYPs that I've shared with you, it's been out. It's still out. The $950,000 equipment line, we don't have it. The set aside for the new school for cash flow purposes to open that new school several years from now, it's out. So we're as lean as can be in terms of this budget. It does, of course, include the STRS and PERS pension increases and our required 3% match for the total of the routine restricted maintenance is how we fix our broken stuff and how we stay ahead of deferred maintenance as well as the deferred maintenance batch. So these are the multi-year projection numbers, the highlight. There's a more detailed, larger version, I believe, in your packet. The bottom line is we're looking at maintaining the board reserves. This includes the increase in special ed contribution of $700,000. Without that, just to give you some parameters, the preliminary budget would have been closer to 8.1% on the reserve, and that third year instead of 7.01 would have been 8.7 because it's just 700,000 each single year ongoing, right? So when you multiply that out, it really does impact you when you have an ongoing obligation because you can see the contribution, it's set and it's frozen at 16.5. It's this line right here, kind of like in the middle of the spreadsheet, 16.5, 16.5, 16.5. So we have to have a backup plan because it's not frozen in time. So that's what I'll get to in a minute. This is required of reasons for excess reserves. This is a new requirement, perhaps 2 or 3 years old, that it was put into the Ed Code. So anytime that we have quote unquote excess reserves, we have to show our county office, oversight agency, an explanation of why we have excess reserves. And so the excess reserves actually includes everything above the fund balance. So it's $753,000 in total of our 7% minimum reserve, but that includes for the petty cash that we have, revolving fund, and $80,000. Say if we close the warehouse, what's the estimated value if we had to close shop and sell all those things? That's $80,000, leaving $623,000 is roughly for the balance of the MYP to essentially stay above the 7% reserve minimum. So this is a required form, and then after that is a remaining unsubstantiated balance of 0. So this is a required form. It has to be part of the public hearing. That's why I'm sharing it with you, so that there's no questions about that in terms of us sharing it with the public. Risk to the MYP. So there's 2 types of risks, ones that we can completely mitigate and are complete control of, and ones that are the state, and a combination of both sometimes is true. So there's obviously going to be some differences and variances between the May revision, what we're having to know now with the information available to us, and the enacted budget. So nobody can predict what those differences are until we have an enacted budget, until those trailer bills come out with all the details. That's one risk. But we're trying to mitigate them as much as we can, like not budgeting one-time revenues until we know what they are. Economic risk, of course, capital tax gains are volatile. They go up, they go down. We're having to be at the peak right now. I think at the May revision, I show you a graph of exactly how that looks like, and we're really at the peak of the capital tax gains. So any fluctuation in that obviously will have some impact in terms of total revenue to the state, and therefore put pressure on the state in order to meet their obligations in terms of Prop 98 minimum guarantee. The federal budget, the administration came up with a new budget that's $9 billion in cuts, substantial cuts. Now, luckily for us, Title I and others included actually a 21% cut in here. On the federal side, his is like 13% cut. So I think we're kind of okay on the federal side, but who knows? We have to wait and see. Wait and see is the approach on that one. And then on the federal side, he is proposing a cut to special ed of approximately $35 per student, which is troublesome because, again, it's an underfunded program. If anything, he should be providing more resources to that instead of less. Increasing CalSTRS. We've seen the rates be adjusted for CalPERS. CalSTRS has talked about it, but it takes legislative action to change those, as I understand, so it's not as easy but it is coming. So those perhaps won't change in the current year, 17-18, but will definitely be telegraphed in the subsequent year. So an action could be taken in the middle of 17-18, telegraphing an increase in those future rates, elevating our costs and our multi-year projection further. Local, of course, there's special ed increases, and transportation increases, of course, relative to special ed transportation. The free and reduced percentage, the unduplicated count, we're having that on the long horizon at 57%. We're at 58, 59% right now. So it's just a little cushion there that we have because we've established that 57% is our safety net. And so that the forecast assumes 57% through 1920. How do we mitigate that? I mean, there's a couple of things I've had to do differently this year in the MYP. So, you know, I'm conservative. I wanted to budget 50% of new revenues. I wasn't able to do that. So how do we do that? How do we mitigate for that? Well, we've talked about prudent fiscal planning in 18-19. So even though this is a public hearing for 17-18, we've always got to look at the multi-year projection. Perfectly good reason to start budget development process really early for the 18-19 fiscal year. Not so we could add things to the budget, but both to be prepared to add and to also make tough decisions if we need to make tough decisions to maintain our 7% reserve. So we're looking at the entire general fund. Our entire LCAP process has to be thorough. Of course, it always has been, but really looking towards both ends of the spectrum. Do we have more? Well, here's a plan if we have more. Do we have less? Well, here's a plan if we have less. And really prioritize that and take our time with you, board, to have those public comments, public discussions, and have that be in place early. So a budget development calendar for the 18-19 fiscal year will come to you in August. Obviously, we'll have to mirror the LCAP feedback. They have to be linked. We can't decouple them. I can't go out there with my own survey independent of the LCAP survey. I can't put up a link in the GUSD website independent of all that process. We've got to link these things together. So that's the process that I'm proposing we engage in early for the 18-19 fiscal year. That concludes the presentation, and of course, I'll take questions.
This is part of the public hearing. Since the LCAP and the budget projections must match. So, this is still a public hearing. Yes, Mr. Rosso.
In the percentage of students that are the targeted population that affects our funding is that you're projecting 57%. And what is the amount that where we lose funding?
Well, we don't, well, the sweet spot in terms of the concentration funding is 55% threshold. So beyond 55%, you get 50% of the base inflated on that. So right now, concentration, we get about $1.4 million in total concentration. So the first thing to go will be that 1.4 million if we go below 55%. Beyond that, the supplemental is, I think, 10 million or that kind of range. So we're into the supplemental funding substantially. Is really the concentration piece that we got to watch for. And that's ongoing funding. So if any reduction in that or any increase in that can hurt or help on an ongoing basis.
So again, your projection, how you project from 59 to 57, that we're actually losing concentration. You know.
Concentration, yeah, because when I in 2013 that was around 60%, and you know we've slid down a little bit. So I anticipate that slope is going to continue, although gradually. Maybe there's something different that changes that cycle, but I just see that trend continuing to slide a little bit.
Yes, Trustee Pacino.
On special ed encroachment, you have 21.3 million expenditures for special ed budgeted for next year. How much of that is covered with special ed funding, and how much is, what is the encroachment?
Encroachment is the contribution from the general fund is 12.6 million. 12.6 million. 12.6 million. And so that was my point, and thank you, Trustee Pisano, for asking me that. 12.6 million comes from the general fund. to support special ed encroachment. And so that's why it's hard to even think of anybody cutting funding for special ed at any level, whether it be state or federal, because it's already an underfunded program. We're required to do it. We're legally obligated to do it, yet it's severely underfunded in many ways.
So special ed funding only covers less than half of our expenditures.
Yes. And I thought it was important for me to put this up there because our budget and forecast never included a 700,000 increase from one year to the next on any one program. So it was important for me to show that trend, only because I think we have to focus on it and either put some really strong emphasis on driving that down, of course, doing right by the IEP, our students, but there's multiple ways of achieving that.
And what about transportation costs?
Transportation costs, I don't think there were severe increases in that. I think it was consultants, primarily everything else. Transportation, we've been pretty good about. Maybe, don't get me wrong, we like for those rides from school to school and point A to point B to diminish and start getting folks under 45 minutes. That'd be ideal. But transportation hasn't been the real driver behind the increases.
So we have our transportation revenues cover our expenditures?
No, we do, but the contribution in there is pretty standard. If the increases to those programs are only because of the salary increases, things that we control, because we can always accommodate, look at routes, make them as more efficient as possible.
Right.
But it's not the driver of the 700,000 increase.
Other comments, questions? I have a question. Would you repeat what you said a couple of weeks ago about why this 57% might change? It has to do with the demographics and the housing costs. So would you just talk about that again, please?
Yes, thank you, Madam President. So in Gilroy, as many members of the audience know, the Glen Loma Ranch development is building out over probably 2,000 homes, if not 1,800 homes, over several years. These homes are priced at $700,000, $800,000, and some along 3rd Street, Hecker Pass development, are much higher than that, or a little higher than that. These are not low-income homes. So the targeted group that drive our supplemental and concentration funding are low-income. There can be English language learners, or there could be foster youth. Typically, that's not, they don't fit this criteria of being able to purchase those $900,000 homes. So our demographics are changing. We've seen that throughout our own short history here, my short history here. In 2013, the unduplicated count was over 60%. Now it's coming 59, closer to 58. And so that's why I'm really careful in projecting outgoing revenues, because I could also paint a pretty picture that we're going up. And if that revenue doesn't come in as materialized, then we have a double whammy, an effect of not getting that material revenue that I forecasted, and now we have to make cuts, right, when I bring it down to reality. So I think it's important for us to look at that 57% on the subsequent years, not as a conservative number, but as a more realistic number. And we can always true up, as we do with our revised budget, putting in the carryover, putting in things that we know, one-time revenues, getting in the grants, budgeting as we get them along, and truing up the revenue as we've done in the past. In the past year, our budget at 50% of the subsequent new revenue that we anticipate. We'll always true it up to, say, 80% by the January proposal, and then basically 90 to 100% in the May revise. And right now, it's all in for the current year that we're looking at. So that process will continue, but because I've had to change that parameter of new revenues from 50 to 80 and 75, we then now have to, mitigate it with some prudent planning. Should that not happen, should the revenue not materialize, we have to have a plan B, which comes into play with a new budget development process. Not new, but a perhaps more extended budget development process and more conversations about our budget priorities, just in case the state hits a soft patch and the revenue doesn't materialize, or unduplicated count falls below 57%.
Thank you. Well, I've said this before, but I really appreciate your conservative viewpoint on this I think that's going to really help us in the long run.
Thank you.
And also for this packet, it's very, this is a keeper. It's very informative, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Any public
Yes,
hearing?
Trustee Rosso.
I have another question. Again, as we know, our special ed expenditures have climbed substantially in recent years. And we're spending, what is it, about 17% of our budget? Is that correct?
Roughly, yes.
And how's that compared to other districts in general?
It's, if you look at the enrollment of special ed students to ours, I think that statewide is around 10, 11%, and we're about 16%, I believe. So we're a little on the higher side of the average. But again, most districts in Santa Clara County, I belong to this group in the county, we're all struggling with the same thing. Here in this county, the special ed encroachment, we're all struggling with it. And we've all seen similar, graphs going up and up since 2012. So it's not unique to us, but it definitely feels impactful on the budget, of course.
So again, when they're talking about, of course, education cuts at the federal level, and special ed is one of the areas of targeted.
Right.
We don't know what type of potential impact that might have on us, other than that pretty much it's an encroachment. It becomes basically added to our encroachment because there's nowhere else to go. Because we're still obligated to fund.
Correct. So right now, we're getting about 5 million or so of property tax transfer from the SELPA, the group that we have for special ed in the county level. So say that goes to 4 million, so that's $1 million cut on an ongoing basis that we now have to find and be able to meet. That's a hypothetical, right? So that's just to throw a number out there. The 5 million and change is actually the number that we get from the SELPA as a property tax transfer. So that's really what's at stake there, because the SELPA is only going to give us what they're allocated. So we have to make the rest. We have to make the whole. So that 12.6 million contribution from the general fund then has to increase to match, unless we look at our IEPs and something changes there and the services changes there and we're able to exit out students. So it's a successful story, right? When you're able to modify an IEP where you don't longer need the para, because you don't longer need the para, the instructional aid is then reassigned to another one that does need it, and we have to hire another one. That para is always going to be needed somewhere else, but that student effectively is more independent, and we don't have to hire a second one. We can reassign that paraprofessional, and that's a happy scenario there. But other than that, we have to meet that obligation as outlined in the IEP.
Thank you.
We have other questions, comments? This is still part of the public hearing. Hearing none, I will close the public hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mesa. The next part of our agenda, we will have District English Learner Advisory Committee, DLAC, will present an annual report to the school board.
Good evening, President Midgard, members of the board, and Dr. Flores. We're here for the annual DLAC report, and I'd like to introduce this evening one of our staff members, Denise Camarera, who is our secondary EL coach, and one of our graduates of Project to Inspire, Mrs. Kenya Perez, who will be talking to you in a little bit about Project to Inspire and the work that's been done. So you are aware that we have a district-level committee of parents that are representing their various sites, and their goal is to come together and advise the district on a variety of issues related to services for English learners. Again, what we strive to do is have some strong organization for our DLAC members so that they in turn can support their site's ELAC. We are required to spend some time on particular topics, but we have expanded that over the years so that it's increased in terms of things that the parents suggest to us. We take a survey annually and find out what they want to know about. But they're very involved, and all of our DLAC parents can speak quite articulately about their LCAP and about our school plans and what other systems are going on or what initiatives are going on in the district. So this year we had, for example, a presentation on PBIS, talked about attendance, of course the reclassification process, and LCAP is a big portion of the topics as well. This is an activity, I don't see if Mrs. Flores is here tonight. I was hoping she would attend. She's one of our DLAC parents, have been a very loyal parent for many, many years. So we, again, try to provide activities to our DLAC members so that they can go out and in turn provide them to their school sites. So this is an activity that we did with DLAC, looking at ways that parent involvement can happen, take place when it's based on Epstein's framework. And we did this activity. We gave them all the materials, and they in turn replicated it. And this is Mrs. Flores doing this at South Valley Middle School's ELAC. Parent University, you heard about last meeting. We did it slightly different this year from previous years. We had a keynote speaker, Consuelo Kickbush. It was very well received, and there she is with a group of parents. These are some of the reflections from the members of DLAC at the end of the year. We take stock of where we are and what things we want to work on. And these are some of their comments. We will continue to try to grow our group. This year, our group kind of fluctuated. We started out strong and then kind of waned towards the end of the year. But we are really proud of the leaders that our DLAC members have become and the work they do out at school sites. And that concludes my portion of the report. However, we would like to spend a few minutes talking a little bit about Project to Inspire. I wanted to say Ms. Yolanda Lucero could not be here this evening. So instead, we do have Ms. Kenya Perez, and she's going to tell us a little bit about her work, which is as a Project to Inspire educator. She has come up through the classes and now is one of the educators that provides Project to Inspire throughout the district. And we also do have a handout that Ms. Camarena can show you, can provide for you, showing the Project to Inspire leadership trainings that have occurred this year.
So like Ms. Kathleen said, I'm actually the facilitator for Project to Inspire here in the city of Gilroy, and these are some of the parents that have come also and done Project to Inspire. And I wanted to thank them for coming in and saying, you know, I have taken this class and it has influenced me and it has inspired me as it has to me also. I know they are working really hard and they help a lot in school. They volunteer in whatever Ms. Lucero has offered them, and so they're really leaders in their school sites at this moment. So it's not just me, it's also them. I want to thank, sorry, can you tell their names?
Catalina Madrigal, Alma Sánchez, Lucy Herrera y Tony Sosa. Quería decirles ahorita unas palabras breves en español. I'd like to speak in Spanish, and then I'll go ahead and translate for you. Mis compañeras han trabajado mucho y la clave fue el Inspire, porque hay dos metas bien específicas que querían que ustedes supieran. Una fue el proyecto Inspire, que formuló liderazgo para terminar y completar el proyecto más grande de las ánimas, que es recaudar fondos para la subasta.
Y recordamos, con más con las simples transacciones, esa noche era $14,000. So, estoy muy orgullosa de eso, y más mis colegas. Segundo, es tuvimos una feria de libros. Okay, let me do so I'm saying it's, prior to Inspire, developed this leadership amongst our parents. And for example, Ms. Lucia Herrera, Tony Sosa, and mi compañera Alma Sanchez. And what happened is that when this group of parents got together, we saw a need to step up and help fulfill the biggest fundraiser at our school, which was an auction night. And that night, the Inspire parents pretty much did the big shoveling of that day. We actually developed $14,000 of transactions for just that night on the auction. So we had to step up to the plate. There was an open opportunity, so we did that. And the second point I wanted to deliver, el segundo punto que quiero compartir con ustedes, is that we also, Project to Inspire parents got together and we realized that there was a big need for bilingual books at our library. So these peers of mine and with we went and talked to Barnes & Nobles, and we had one of the biggest successful fundraiser book fair. Not only did we help Barnes & Nobles with $5,800 transactions, and that's not the solid number. That was just that night that we know, and there's other transactions that we're waiting for online. And the second thing is that the community overall, not only did they purchase books for their home, but they also purchased books for the school. And it was 94 books that were donated to Las Animas Library. So those are two key examples of how Inspire helps parents step up and fill that void that is much needed in our school.
And this is just in Las Animas. We are doing a lot of changes. Also, parents are getting involved through the Project to Inspire. They can see themselves achieving a little more in helping their kids. It's not just Las Animas. Glenview parents, we have Rucker parents, where I come from. I have my son there. He goes in 2nd grade. And then at the moment right now, one of the parents there took Project to Inspire this semester. And she ended up being the president of the ELAC and the vice president of the Home and School Club. So she's going to be helping out a lot more because of the inspiring that she has done at this moment. And I do have other parents from other schools, like right here, Alma. Alma is from Antonio del Bono. She attended Rod Kelly. She really enjoyed it. And so I have more, sorry. Yeah. So at this moment, too, this was in November, back in the conference in Monterey. Some of the Las Animas parents also, and Ms. Lucero, which, sorry, wrong way. And there's Alma again. And she's really a trooper. She'll call all the people she can to come into the meetings, to the new classes that we're going to be doing. And more parents here. And other parents from South Valley, and Elliot also. And I do know that one of the biggest inspirations I did have was Ana Quintero. Ana Quintero, when I first started in kindergarten, I didn't know about anything about the schools. And my kid was starting, and I was like, what am I gonna do? How am I gonna help him out? And Project to Inspire helped me. It taught me how to do budgeting for my own home, and also how budgeting starts here in school too. And so it does teach you more than just, oh, you're just a home mom. No, you're involved in school. You're the first parent at your home. You're the first teacher at home. So you involving in school does create a difference. And I just wanted to thank you and say, thank you for bringing Project to Inspire out the community here also. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming and bringing all your little troopers with you. It's never easy. It's great. No, it's great to see them.
Reminds us of what we're here for.
Yes, exactly. Thank you very much. Okay, item 10B on our agenda, we're going to have a community service update. This is an information item.
Good evening, Dr. Flores, President Midgard, and Board of Representatives. I am here just to give I'm kind of the spokesperson, a little bit of an update on the senior class and their community service hours. However, we do have some of the workers here from the school. We have our principals, so maybe Ms. Padilla, Mr. Winslow, and Dr. Sanchez, if you want to come on up, because they're the ones that can maybe speak or answer questions as we go over this evening. Unfortunately, we don't have our community service. I got everything here? Okay. I'll just wing it then, but feel free to ask any questions. We got them here. The community service advisors, as they were recognized earlier by Dr. Flores, are the ones that really do the daily work working with individuals and the students. And what we have here is an updated PowerPoint, a little bit different from the PowerPoint that was posted a week ago. This will be posted tomorrow because we had some last-minute work, some last-minute cajoling and work from the students, and it was really nice to see. You can see that at 2 of our schools, we're at 100% of our seniors who completed their credits have met their community service hours. 2 schools, just a couple of students, 99%. At a couple of the schools. So these are the students who, the percent of students who have completed all of their credits and have completed their community service hours. There are additional students who unfortunately have not completed their credits, and ACs, as I was speaking with them today, are in the midst of working with them to see what they need to do this summer, and that's why we have our summer graduation ceremony as well. Some of these students, in addition, will need to complete their community service hours this summer so they can still qualify for their 2017 diploma, and that's the additional work. What's that?
8 students.
Didn't
make it.
Of those are the students who completed their credits but did not complete community service. In addition, there are some additional students who didn't complete community service and their credits. So this is just an update to see to what effect did community service affect our rate of graduation at this moment in time. Yeah, but it was a great feat, and once again, a hand to the sites, right, and the work that they've done. It's unfortunate we don't have our community service liaisons here this evening because they're the ones that certainly did all the work. I don't know if you have any questions that I can't answer, but
Why did the number of ultimate students change between the original board briefing and this one?
So in that case, there were students who, there was a hope that, for example, senior grades hadn't come in, so there were students who were hopefully on track for graduation, but once their credits came in, if they failed a class, for example, let's say they failed a senior class, government, economics, senior English, they're no longer qualified to graduate for their credits. And so now it's not a community service issue that they're not graduating, it's a credit issue. They'll need to make up those credits this summer and any additional hours they might have had remaining. Does that answer the question?
Yes, but in Mount Madonna's case, there was actually an increase.
Right, and so they had some students who maybe that initial count a week ago, they weren't certain that we were really going to complete their credit, so maybe I would have to consult with Ms. Medina, I don't know if she could speak to that, but may have underestimated who was going to complete that actually did complete credits and community service at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Trustee Bass?
I know that people are working to do both credits and community hours in the summertime. And
Correct.
my question was, are students allowed to work in one category for all of their hours in the summer to try and finish that entire requirement? Are they supposed to be separating it into different avenues?
So they must still meet the requirement for their 80 hours. I think that's 2 categories they must get their hours in. So if they have already met that portion of meeting 2 categories, they could complete the 80 in that one category. If their 60 hours they have so far is all one category, they would need still to meet that requirement of that second category. Yeah.
I just know that we've got Garlic Festival coming up,
Right.
and we've got a lot of different potential avenues for students.
Lots
to
of
take
opportunities this
advantage of.
summer.
I just don't really know if they're allowed to put all of their hours in one.
It could not all 80, they cannot all 80 be in the same. Is it 70-10 or 80-20? Yeah, speak to that. Thank you.
Oh, we got him up. Well
Yeah,
done.
you got that. I was napping there for a little bit. First of all, I want to thank Kermit Schrock. Always does an amazing job. He's followed throughs. He's been at the site. He knows how things operate. Suggestion going forward in the future, if we could have this presentation after graduation, we'll have a more meaningful discussion about the actual who has graduated, who shook your hand when you're on stage and got the diploma. Because right now we're still in flux. Technically, they could, up until the moment of 6:59 p.m., hand in those community service hours. Are we going to just stop them from not, so you could run into that situation there. So I would like to have this presentation in the future when it's all said and done, so we could talk about real numbers, because there's some flux going on, so those numbers could actually change between now and next Thursday.
So there's no hard deadline until the actual walk.
It's May 1st. May 1st is what we have on paper, and then you have your procrastinators, you have you have some,
Deadline and then they
you have students that specialize in if it wasn't for the last minute, there would be, it would be done, so. And so how do you manage that? And as school leaders, and Mr. Winslow could attest to that, you have those exceptions. They met their obligations, they're trying to work with the people that, their hours and what have you, and signatures, and the community agency that granted the hours and what have you. So and they're in various categories as well. So I like to have this after we have the actual graduation ceremony. Just a suggestion, but it's your call. But we have students that they have the credit requirements, and we have some special ed students that are SDC and have special circumstances that are also in play, and perhaps you saw them in a closed session, and we're providing waivers in some circumstances, but they're held to the same standard, and some of them have completed a portion of the 80, maybe 40, but they have special circumstances, so that's something, of course, that's your call on. But to have these numbers, and as Board Member Pace gave the totality, it's it's in a single digit for all four high schools. To have the succession rate that we had is pretty amazing, and we're pushing these students to accomplish amazing things, and above and beyond the 220 minimal graduation requirement credit-wise. They have another 80 if they're in our district all 4 years to fulfill, and many of them do rise to the occasion, and not before the May 1st deadlines. We put some today, brought those in, and working with Kermit, updating these hours up into the minute. They're bringing them faithfully in and fulfill. They're not able to go to Magic Mountain. These are students that because they didn't fulfill the graduating requirements at the moment, they're not even on the trip. They were up into this moment at Gilroy Gardens, or the Lord's Table, or a community agency, fulfilling their hours and turning them in. So they're to be commended. There are some that didn't make it, and there's going to be a lot more, to be honest, credit-wise, that didn't make it. You'll see them in August.
Back to the question was, how many hours do they have to complete in 2 categories? What's the minimum? I can't remember that.
I can't remember that too.
Anyone remember? Good, that makes
70,
me feel
70,
better.
10. Yeah, 70, so at least 10 hours in the second category.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is outside, a lot of it's outside of the school community and the community
Right.
itself. But a lot of those hours are fulfilled on campus. And a lot of our students have special connections, which gives them advantage to fulfill an immense amount of hours, which you've seen on the plaques, that, you have 1,100 hours in certain circumstances, 600 in our case. They have those special connections. You may want something for the board to consider in the future about how it's done, because a lot of students don't have those connections, and they struggle to make those connections and find places that they're able to fulfill their hours in. Those are just real issues that we deal with at a site level. They come in, their parents come in, and they have a lot of explanations as to why that can occur. And so.
Trustee Pacino.
Well, I would agree that we need a report after graduation, but I would like that to be a second report, and I would like a first report right around the deadline, which is May 1st. And the reason I would like that is, speaking specifically to your concern, and our concern is, do we have any kids how many kids do we have? Because clearly we do have them, who have all of the graduation requirements and don't have the 80 hours. What are we really looking at? Because that's a way of monitoring. If we have kids that don't have connections, what are we doing to help them? And what is the record-keeping process like? And what is the follow-up and the monitoring of them? So I would like May 1st, and then post-graduation.
And that's an excellent point. And in past presentations by the board, and Kermit being the data dude behind all that, we even go to the junior class and the sophomore class,
Sure.
and where they're at in their progress. And what we've done at the site level is we put benchmark hours for students and this is something I think that's come up in the past.
Sure. And it's our job to monitor and make sure that that's happening.
If you're in the
every
district for
year.
4 years, 20 your freshman year is
20,
where you're at, and 40 your sophomore year is where you should be at, and 60 and 80. And so, but I don't think we have those checks in place. We've put them at the site level, so you can't purchase prom tickets, you can't be eligible for certain activities if you're not at these benchmark hours, and it helps when we do that. But I think we need to talk about consistently from all sites how we manage the hours year to year, and then you have your students coming in from other districts with no community service expectation at all, and a few of these, actually one of them is a student that just came in January.
But we prorate that.
So
Not expected to complete 80 hours.
of course, but they have
semester.
it's prorated by 5. But there's expectation in orientating them and getting them involved in the process and engaged when they come from a school district that does not have that expectation. So we manage that, but those are all challenges. I'm just sharing with you openly what we got to manage at various levels in our offices in our schools. And our students are rising to the occasion, and you can see that the numbers are approaching 100, above 90. I think early on, when we started this, we were in the low 90s, and now we're up close to 100% in many cases.
Board members, any other questions, comments? Okay, well, we appreciate the information. Thank you.
Thank you.
We know behind the scenes, this has got to be a lot of work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to 10C, first reading, contract with Graduation Alliance, which was mentioned earlier. So Assistant Superintendent Alvaro Mesa will introduce the item for board discussion. This is a first reading of the proposed agreement with Graduation Alliance.
Thank you, Madam President. As you said, it is a first reading, and we thought it was a good idea to bring it as a first reading because it's a new partnership. We all know Advanced Path, but we don't know Graduation Alliance. And the assets of Advanced Path were acquired by Graduation Alliance on May 4th. So we really didn't have time to do what we normally do with our new contractors, is vet them, do all these things, and figure out options, because we really didn't have that much time, quite frankly. But as our Dr. Flores superintendent said, I think, quite pleased with what we know about Graduation Alliance. The CEO, Ron Kostler, is here to give you a short presentation, an introductory presentation, if you will. But I think what we hope is that you see that the vision is quite aligned to what we have. So I don't think that we'll skip a beat in the next year. And actually, I think they offer some opportunities that we're excited about out into the future. The current agreement doesn't take us into a new realm, but I think Ron can speak to that, and he's here with us tonight. Ron, please. So again, this is not for board action, but for first reading of the contract.
Thank you. Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Meza, and thank you, Superintendent Flores. So my name is Ron Klausner. I'm CEO of Graduation Alliance, and as Mr. Meza said, we only own the company for a few weeks, so I'm far from an expert. But what I was asked was to share a little bit about Graduation Alliance and talk a little bit about what we do and a little bit about the academy. So at a high level, we do three things. There are 33 million dropouts in the United States. Not surprising, California has the largest number of dropouts. My domicile state of Texas has 3.3 million dropouts. And so we do this intersection of education, so work the students toward a high school diploma. As the student is getting a high school diploma, we believe that it is critical to provide employability skills. Employability skills comes in two different flavors, so to speak. One is a lot of the students we serve have very little digital literacy skills, so we teach them how to create spreadsheets, how to create Word docs. There's Department of Labor employability skills, how one's supposed to behave in the workplace, diversity, communication skills, et cetera. All of that is taught while the student is always earning high school credits. Third facet of what we do is a lot of our students who have dropped out do not see the relevance of school, irrespective of reason why. And so there is a focus for those that are interested and have the aptitude for what a lot of people call CTE. So those that have the desire to go into manufacturing, there's advanced manufacturing, there's logistics, healthcare, building trades, there's a military track. So what we try to prepare our students for is a track toward career, a track toward college. And I'll talk in a moment about what makes us different. So we're in about a dozen states. We have 3 major state deals, Ohio, Tennessee, and Hawaii. And we serve a little less than about 3,000 students. So what a lot of people do not know with this population is that the primary reason that students drop out are not academics. These are high intergenerational poor people in general. The primary reason is lots of other things. Either girl got pregnant, have to bring income into a family, there are mental health issues, there's physical disability issues. In fact, most of the students have more than one issue, and the academics is the secondary issue or a byproduct. So what is our approach to, it's not only out-of-school youth, it's adults as well, is number one is to re-engage the dropout. And we do that exceedingly well. Clearly, I'm biased. A lot of the students, if you go into what is known as the student information system, this device changes like crazy with teenagers. And so by the time you're trying to contact a student that might have dropped out 2 years ago, who has a sophomore equivalent of credits, there is a high probability that the phone number has changed. And so what we use is a multitude of ways to get to the student. Community activists like Mr. Morales working on the academy, but probably the biggest thing we do is social media. And so we let the viral effect like Twitter, where students or young people will communicate with other people and say, did you hear about? And what we do well is that velocity matters. And so if you don't engage these students when they're ready, now think again, you have a student that's out of school for 2 years. They're not going to wait for a traditional school year in many cases. They're not going to wait for the fall if they happen to be interested in March. So we start with these students about 360 days a year. And our model is where there is robust social support services. So there's a social worker, meets with them once a week, it's required. There's an academic coach that's dedicated to the student, and we're a tech-enabled company. So while the courseware is mainly online, there are people that support the student, and we will monitor pace and progress, and those technology filters or triggers will determine how we contact students. Sometimes it's via chat, sometimes text, sometimes telephone calls, but there's a lot of communication going back and forth to encourage and motivate the student. It's 24/7 tutoring, 359 days a year. We provide a PC with a Wi-Fi, so there's no reason if somebody's working, a lot of the young people are working, that they can't get on a computer and do their work when they're ready to do their work. And there's expectations of that pacing and ultimate progress. And I should add, there are counselors, again, to assess and determine what direction students want to go. 2 of the states actually use the tool for all of their students, not just dropouts. So they take our tool that we use, and they use it in the state of Tennessee. So if you would go online, you would see little tiny font that has our name, but we're the architect that built that capability for all of the Tennessee students. So moving forward, and I thought Superintendent Flores articulated it well, I would be incredibly disingenuous to say we're going to come here and do this, this, and this when we only own the company for a few weeks. So the probability is that we're not going to make a lot of change with one potential exception. And that is we are really good at deploying technology. And so one of the areas that I could see without upsetting the way the academy runs, and the academy is reasonably good efficacy, is that we have data that can inform the teachers in real time about how a student is progressing or not. When I heard you talk about the community service hours, that's something that we would nail pretty easily as far as just pacing and monitoring. We're good at stuff like that. Data that informs parents and data that informs students, because you want to have accountability by the student. If you start to water down the expectations with children, in our experience, then that's what the outcome you're going to get. So we don't see a lot of changes. It's too close to the beginning of the school year, with the exception, again, of a technology deployment or a technology enablement. And we wouldn't do that without the cooperation or collaboration of Principal Padilla moving forward. This is a map of where we are currently located.
Thank you, Ron. So questions from the board?
Do we have to wait for students to drop out? Is there any way to reach students before this happens?
Yes, so the academy, and I should have been more clear, thank you so much. The academy works with students, Advanced Path Academy, that generally are credit deficient, so they haven't dropped out yet. So I focused today on what I know better, Graduation Alliance. So you're 100% correct. That's one of the reasons why we bought the company. We wanted to get earlier into the process before the student drops out.
Other questions, board members? Trustee Good?
Well, I think this is great. My questions are all contract related. So for Mr. Meza, why is this not on a district-approved contract?
So we had our legal counsel, Mary Hernandez, review it because the template just doesn't allow for this type of service. It's a quite unique contract. It's a merger. We understand that the platform, the fundamental agreement was Advanced Path. So what we did was take, I think, 6 or 7 different agreements, merge them into one. Mary has reviewed it thoroughly, and that's why we couldn't put it onto the one template that we have, but she has reviewed it and has approved it.
From my perspective, it's a mess. And just for example, the termination clause provides for 30 days of non-performance and we're obligated to payment. There's a confidentiality requirement with no definition of confidentiality. There's a definition of covered data and information, and says it's defined in a subsection that doesn't exist. The intellectual property is completely inconsistent with any of our other contracts, so it needs a lot of work, the entire contract.
So I'd be happy to take that offline, but she did review it thoroughly. We had, I believe, over 2 weeks to review it, and she approved it. So we would be happy to go back, and that's why it's a first reading, so we can come back to you with a modified contract.
Did you want to say something?
No, I was going to make the point you just made. That's why we put it on twice, to make sure, because this is, we just learned about it less than a month ago, so we're moving as quickly as we can. We want to continue the services in the fall, and we don't want any gap.
I mean, the right way to do it is to, because I personally worked on the contract issues for years.
Yeah.
And I don't see any reason why we couldn't use our standard services contract, and then you attach an addendum, like we have all these appendixes attached as to what's going to occur. That should be able to cover it.
Okay.
And then we're not reinventing the wheel and coming up with a mess, which is what we have in this current contract, in my opinion.
And you were on the committee with Mary, so maybe the 3 of you could talk about the contract.
Sure.
And we need to, of course, make the changes by next Friday when we post. But that would be helpful if you could give us a little bit more of your time.
Sure.
And you've already done on that committee to get this done for the next meeting. Thanks.
Yes, Trustee Pacino.
Well, you said 3 things that are near and dear to my heart with these kids: counselor, social worker who meets weekly with the kids, and an academic coach. And trust us, we know who these kids are, and we know why they aren't graduating. And it's very, very difficult to get them in. And with that kind of a support system, I think they have a chance. And that's all we can, that's the best we can do for them. And this is, I think, very, very helpful. But I do have one question. On your Who is Graduation Alliance, you have 19,000 plus students served, earning 56,261 credits. That's only 3 credits a kid. So I'm hoping that's incorrect.
Let me go back. Where am I going here? Yep. Should have worn my glasses. Yeah, you are 100% correct. The 19,000 students are since inception, that's 9 years, and the 56,000 credits, I'm not sure how many years, but it's not 9 years. You're
Yeah,
100% right.
so there's a disconnect there.
Yeah, yes.
Please
you're
tell
right.
me they earn more than 3 credits.
No, they do. But the credit system in a lot of states are different than
Right.
California, but you're 100% right. That's an error.
Maybe you
My
could
error.
maybe you could send us the number.
Yeah, I will do
For
that.
some clarification. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments, board members? Trustee Rosso.
Thank you for the presentation, and I have a lot of confidence in the advanced path group that we've had, and I have expectations that we'll continue the success that we have had with our program, and it sounds like you have a pretty comprehensive support system in place to make it successful, so thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Trustee Pace.
So this sounds very exciting. Do you see keeping the Advanced Path as a brand name or something, or do we need to start thinking of a new name for that?
So we haven't finalized that decision, but it is highly probable that we will go with the Graduation Alliance name. We are highly recognized in a number of places, and not to name drop, but including governors. So we were asked to come in and talk about the economic implications. We have about 5 or 6 states this past year, so it's likely we'll go, but we haven't made that final decision yet.
So we get to rename something.
Thank you so much for the presentation. And
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ron.
it's nice to see Charles Morales in the audience, because he has certainly worked with students in Advanced Path from many, all staff, of course. Thank you. Yeah, well,
He knows it
he
all.
knows a lot about the community, yeah. And we know there's such a need for students who, for whatever reason, the regular program just doesn't work.
Yep.
So it's sometimes just called life, their lives. Okay, so, moving on to 10D, the first reading for the elementary ELA adoption.
Good evening again.
We
I'm
have
here to
Director Kathleen Bierman, who will do the presentation.
Yes, good evening. I'm going to talk a little bit about our process and then share with you some of our recommendation. I know this has been a long process, and it feels like a lot of suspense, right? Here we go. Similar to the process that was used at the middle school level, when we convene a group of teachers together, we really do a thorough job of following what the adoption process is. So when the Board of Education at the state level releases those materials that are available for adoption, we have an obligation to look at the materials. However, what has changed over the last several years is we're not actually required to adopt from the state-approved list as long as there is a thorough process involving teachers. Now, we in our district have chosen to adopt from that list, but some districts have not done so. And then, of course, the instructional materials funding is part of our LCFF, or local control funding formula. In our process for elementary, we had 16 teachers representing all sites and grade levels, as well as academic coach, we had SEAL, non-SEAL, DI, non-DI, so we had the whole mix. We had probably the longest process I've ever been involved in. We had 11 meetings when we were all said and done, but as I'll explain to you in a moment, it was a good thing. And the first part, again, was about getting trained on what is it that we are looking for. They needed to understand the components of the ELA-ELD framework in order to set our sights on what we were looking for and how we were going to meet the goals of the framework. We could only really pilot 2 programs because at the elementary level of those state adoption, there were only 2 programs that were available in both English and Spanish. So for us, because we have districts that we do offer dual immersion, we right away did not choose to even look at other programs that only offered English. So you would think with only 2 programs it would have been easy, but it wasn't so. As part of the process, after doing the training on the ELA-ELD framework, then there were full-day publisher trainings on each of the pilots. They ran a 6 to 7 week pilot, and after each one, we did the evaluations based on this rubric. Again, this was the role. This was facilitated by Rhonda Beasley, who is a Santa Clara County Office of Education literacy coordinator. She did an amazing job, and we were all present for that. And again, using the framework to guide our decision-making. Just for your reference, is looking at those themes in the framework about the content, language, effective expression, meaning-making, and foundational skills. That's how the materials were addressed and how we looked at each one of those elements. Of course, ELD standards integrated and designated. And then we had a session on developing a district lens in which we looked at district data. So we said, who are the students we're serving? Because not all programs meet the students that, every student population. So we kept in mind who are our students and what are their needs. And again, this describes the criteria, the 5 different categories. So not only alignment, of course, with the standards. So no program can even get on the list at the state level if they don't demonstrate alignment. So that's kind of a given, but some are better aligned than others, and some are aligned for certain standards and not others, stronger at certain grade levels. And so that's part of the discussion, how the program is organized, and of course the assessment components, universal access, how well we're able to meet the needs of students at differing levels, and finally the teacher support or instructional planning. So we did have 2 programs to review, McGraw-Hill Wonders program, and the other one is called Benchmark Advance. You've seen this probably strengths and weaknesses document. The interesting thing that emerged on this is that we had one program that was particularly strong in certain areas and the other program particularly strong in other areas. Our teachers really liked, though, how they, for our benchmark, they liked a lot of the features. They liked the fact that they felt that the students were very engaged in the content. They had sort of meaningful problems of the world to address. So the themes were very interesting for them. They had a lot of pieces about close reading, and the students are able to actually electronically annotate when they're reading. It was quite rigorous. Again, science and social studies were interwoven very well in that. So those were some of the, and we had great authenticity with the Spanish components of the text. Some of the areas that were difficult for benchmark were some of the weaknesses around pacing. Again, that's one of the things that, these are publishers, so it's up to us then for teachers to take a look at that. Now let's make it real for us. So they may suggest this is the pacing, but we need to look at it and say what is realistic in that. Maybe fewer materials we found at the lower levels, and that the rigor did vary by grade level. Intervention resources were also a concern. With Wonders, it was more familiar because it's similar to what we're currently using. We're using the Treasures program. They did have some great online resources, very familiar, as I mentioned, and a lot of paired text. but it had many, many materials to manage, so many books, especially at the upper grades. There's this color book, this, I mean, there's a lot of materials to manage, and really did lack some of the rigor at the upper grades. They do both, again, have to address ELD standards. However, Wonders really looked at what we call Part 1 of standards, which is around meaningful interactions and language, student language, whereas Part 2 of the standards is how English works. So it's actually teaching students, how not only grammar, but why we use certain words that we do, and that the science and social studies were not aligned with the stories. So, we did have, Dr. Flores was a part of these discussions with the principals, and we did have, we really struggled with this decision. But as I've shared with anybody who will listen, the team was amazing, as were the principals and the leaders. The team of teachers, I've just never seen it before. They just were so, they wanted to make sure we did the best for students, for all students. And again, when you think about our district and all the different components that we have primary grade students, we have upper grade students, we have students in dual immersion, we have students we have the SEAL program, we have a lot of different things. And so they considered all of those things, and that's why the discussion was so difficult. Because while they could have said, this is great for me, I had a great time, and the kids loved it, it wasn't about that. So that's where we kept going back and forth and saying, well, what is best for our students? In the end, we are recommending benchmark advance for our district, finding that, with looking at all of those different pieces and looking at the big picture, it's going to meet the needs of our students. We recognize, however, we're going to be doing some shoring up, and we want to be very transparent about that, because at the lower levels, one of the reasons that we had some concerns is that we feel like we weren't it didn't have enough to lay that foundation. So we have a plan to attend to that. In our LCAP, prior to even this process going through, we did have a commitment to provide early literacy training to all of our kinder and first grade teachers. And so that's already built into our LCAP and our professional development plan. So that is what we call the Literacy Academy. It's 3 full days sparsed out over the year. But as we went through this process and talking with principals, we were even more convinced that this is such a critical part of this process, is to make sure that we are not program dependent, but we are instruction dependent, that we're really paying attention to the standards and the instruction, and that our tools are our curricular resources. I don't know if Dr. Flores probably has something to add to this.
Well, this was such a difficult decision because and I've been through adoption so many times now. There's never a perfect program. It's rare that it meets all of our needs. And so, the committee had a recommendation, and I want to be transparent about that we adopt Wonders K1 and benchmarks 2.5. Then we met with the principal group twice, Friday and I can't remember what day it is, yesterday, or Monday maybe. But anyway, we had a really thorough discussion with them. And after reviewing everything that we discussed at those meetings, Kathleen and I put our heads together today. And that's why we're supporting benchmark K5, but with the understanding that in K1, we're going to need to address some concern about benchmark not being as good for teaching the foundational early literacy skills that are so critical in K1. So we know going into the program that's an issue. In prior adoptions, I can think of so many adoptions where we were a year into the program and we realized it was weak in a specific area, and then we had to come in and really supplement it. We're going into this with our eyes wide open, thanks to a dedicated committee that spent a lot of time piloting these materials, and we know right up front what the strengths and weaknesses of the programs are. I think that's a big advantage. The other thing that was really compelling to us was our DI schools really felt strongly that benchmarks was the better program for their students. It has much stronger Spanish component than Wonders. So, there were a lot of factors that we considered, but in the end, we reached the conclusion that we should go with benchmarks. from the beginning, I've said I'd like to see us adopt one program. And I was willing at one point to go with two, even though I didn't feel like that was the best idea or decision for our district. But as we worked through this process and looked at all the pros and cons, it became more and more clear that at least we believe that benchmarks is the way to go, K-5, with the understanding that we'll need to supplement K-1, either with our current program. Wonders is just a new version of Treasures. There's no reason why we can't keep the readers and other materials that we have been using in Wonders. Plus, we'll have a significant focus on PD for our K-1 teachers. It's been a really difficult decision. I've talked to some of you about this as we've gone through the process, and this is where we are.
This is a discussion item, board members? Trustee Good.
Yeah, just for the record, I need to clarify that Benchmark Education Company is a client of mine.
Oh,
So I'm going to abstain from any discussion and will not be voting on this issue.
Thank you for telling us that.
Just for clarification, why do you feel that going with one program is more important?
There are a lot of reasons why we feel that. One, some of us have been through adoptions where 2 different textbooks were adopted, and a number of issues resulted. One is you have teachers move grade levels from year to year. So you train them 1 year in Wonders, and the next year you're going to have to figure out how to train them in Benchmark. I've seen, and I know other people talked about this, that the transition from one program to the other is often not very smooth and coordinated because they're 2 different programs, 2 different approaches, although similar, of course, in the teaching of the standards. We're concerned about our coaches having to learn 2 programs and be able to coach our teachers all the time in these 2 different programs. Concerned about our LIT facilitators having to be proficient in 2 programs. Our principals having to learn how to support the teachers with 2 different programs. So those are some of the reasons. I'm sure Kathleen can articulate some others, but those were some of the concerns about using 2 different programs.
Did you want to add to that, Kathleen?
No, I think that's pretty much it. Like I say, I think this is what we did. We did a lot of this. We did, here are the concerns, and here are some ways we could mitigate it. I think in either way we would have gone, we certainly would have addressed it and found a solution.
Right.
It's messy to do the 2, and unique. I mean, we didn't find that many districts that would have done that. There are a few.
Yeah, actually, there were only 1 or 2 in our county. All the other districts have gone with one or the other. So, obviously, other districts have looked at this. They're ahead of us. They're already using the materials because many of them have already adopted. And I think there was 1 district that used Wonders in K and 1st through 5th benchmark. Is that correct?
I believe they use the core knowledge, which
Our
is
core
but
knowledge.
it's still
Yep.
a different program for their kinder.
Right.
Yes, and yes.
Right. And although our consultant did mention that down south, wherever that is, there are some districts that have adopted 2 different programs, not necessarily these 2, because again, we were committed from the beginning to adopting programs that had a strong Spanish component because of our dual immersion. So I think other districts have made the decision for the same reasons. There are a lot of logistical issues if you adopt 2 programs, and making sure that your teachers are well-trained every year to use, and that your support staff are able to support your teachers, and that means training them in both programs.
I have a question, and it goes back to the teachers who served on this committee, because it's a lot of work to pilot, whether it's math, reading, doesn't matter. It's a lot of work for that classroom teacher. So I'm just curious, what percentage would you say of the committee was in favor of benchmark?
So it
Just
was
round numbers.
It was for the upper grade teachers. It was almost unanimous. I think it was unanimous for the upgrade teachers. I think that right away, you know, when you look at the type of reading instruction that happens in upper grades, it is very different. And I think they were so excited and they welcomed the idea that, again, these kids can, if you, I'm sorry, I brought a lot of things to show you. So I do have some things to show you if you're interested, but there are themes and they follow every grade level. So if it's the theme is technology, how do we use technology in our world or whatever it is, it's things that students can relate to. But they were very excited that, that they could engage kids in this kind of work, that it's everything we've been training them on about, you know, evidence from the text, it was there. It was there, and it was engaging, and there was the writer's workshop, and there was all these different components to that.
And rigorous, I heard them
Sorry?
say, and rigorous.
Very rigorous. If you take a look at some of the text in, and I did bring some at the 4th and 5th grade level, it is very rigorous. That is going to be, you know, that's where we want to aim, so that's good, but we will need to do a lot of preparation. So they really, I think, didn't debate long. When they were trained on wonders first, and actually were quite pleased. They were actually quite pleased because, again, it was, they had an updated, you know, more updated, more aligned. It's had some interesting components to it. But then once they started using benchmarks, that was it. The primary teachers really, I have to say, gave it a good shot, you know, both of them. And what we asked them to do when we kind of came to this standstill is everyone went back and said, the program that you want, now give this other one a chance. So we actually did longer pilots because they did extend that a little bit to go back and really take a look at the components. And then we said, oh, you know, I found this. I didn't know it was there. You know, I think this is a little bit stronger than I thought. Other people, you know, to be honest, in the primary grades kind of stood firm. We brought in the publisher another time for benchmark because we had some questions and addressed that and said, you know, what about this, what about that? In the end, when we made the final one in May, the final meeting we had, they asked me to provide to the principals and to Dr. Flores 2 options. Option 1 was the split, and option 2 is benchmark. So they all went in knowing that if we decided, you know, for the greater good and the bigger perspective, we decided it was going to be just one, that it would be benchmark. And every person in there said, we'll make it work. I mean, these are very strong teachers and very dedicated, and part of our plan that we would like to do is reconvene those teachers and say, okay, now let's take a look and tell us what we need to do. Since you got to it first, we need to hear from you. What is it we're going to need to do to make this a super strong program? And I don't want to portray it as not a strong program. It's a strong program. But what can we do to make it stronger at those grade levels?
Okay. So primary then.
Yes.
You know, that really important time when we're teaching children how to read, et cetera.
Yeah.
I mean, just so important. I like what you said about it's the training of the teachers that's really critical. I mean, the material is important, but I've known teachers in this district that could teach reading to a child no matter what material they had. They would teach a child how to read. But that's not everybody, of course.
Right.
So, a couple of questions. I assume that these adoptions come with leveled readers.
So there are some readers, and again, I have some text here. There are some readers. One of the concerns for benchmark is they just weren't enough. So when you work in your group and then you set kids off to do some independent reading,
right.
There just wasn't enough there. So one of the ideas we have is to use the level readers. That we still have level readers from Treasures. We have very nice, those small, most of you know this,
that
right?
was going to be my question. This district must be full of leveled readers.
Yes, and so,
and so you could still use those.
Of course, and some teachers still use the ones they had from previous adoptions, right? They're nodding over there. Yes, so they do. We use whatever resources we want, and we want to make sure that, you know, we have a rich environment for reading. Yes. So they do come with it, but they don't come as extensively as we would like. But some really cool features that they have, like as a reader's theater, and if you want me to pass out some materials?
Well, the other thing I wanted to emphasize is that we're going to go back to the teachers and say, okay, we do have Treasure still, we still have these readers. Right. What else do we need to make this work for K1?
Right.
Okay, well, I appreciated what you said about, it's the training of the teachers, it's their ability, it's not just the material. So there'll be 3 days set aside during the year for professional development?
Well, our 3 staff development days, but just let me clarify. So we have, our staff development days for this adoption training. The first day, August 15th, I believe it is, our first staff development day will be the new adoption for those schools that are doing the adoption. If you recall, we actually have a graduated plan. So our non-seal schools will be first out the door with the adoption. So they will get that on August 15th. But the 3 days is of the Literacy Academy series is for all K-1 teachers throughout the district. So we actually have a sort of a staggered plan for that. We are going to capture 2 of the professional development days, but the other ones, they're going to have to it's kind of complicated because we have the seal and the non-seal and all those different kinds of things, but every teacher will get that. And this was really at the principal's insistence because I said, when we first talked about this, and we've been talking about this since we developed our LCAP goals, they felt very strongly. And we talked about, let's do kinder first this year. And they said, no, we really want kinder in first grade. We want to set that, and then we want that to be sort of the way we do business, right? That we continue to support those teachers. Not saying our 2nd through 5th don't also deserve, extra support, but because this is so critical, we want to make sure that everyone has that foundation.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? And this is for discussion this evening. It's not an action item yet.
First reading, right?
Yeah, but we appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Would you like to see any materials? You want me to
Well,
leave them there for
he
you?
brought some, we have some up here that we're going to pass around. Yeah, we're going to pass those down. Yeah, thank you. Okay, the next item, we're on 10E, is approve the model fixed price contract between Gilroy Unified School District and Sodexo. Sodexo is the company that's been working with our food services department for many years now.
That's correct, Madam President. So item 10E is approval of the model fixed price contract between GUSD and Sodexo. Representatives from Sodexo are here, led by Martha. Of course, Nalani and Karis are here, who you know well. Back March 16th, the board approved the RFP and model fixed price contract. So why we don't use our contract in this particular case is because we are actually obligated by CDE to use their template, so it's a little bit different story there. You did approve the contract template back in March 16th. We flew the RFP. The RFP required a mandatory bid walk. We were happy to see 3 vendors at the mandatory bid walk when school was out, so we didn't want anybody. We wanted the vendors to walk through our facilities free of any disruptance to our students. NSLD Solutions, Chartwells, and Sodexo were part of the mandatory bid walk. The proposals we received were only by Chartwells with a fixed price of $3.1 million. Sodexo with a fixed price of $2.9 million. I'm rounding off, the actual numbers are there for you. A committee evaluated the proposals and interviewed both Chartwells and Sodexo. We're glad to see 2 of our board members participate, or it's really just BC, just one. BC participated in the evaluation committee. I think that the whole committee list is included in your packet, but we had a very thorough questionnaire. Of course, it was included in the packet. Sodexo, after we applied that criteria, which the criteria, by the way, had a heavy 50% weight on price, because that's one of the key requirements. You have to weigh price higher than any other variable. Sodexo, once we tallied up all the possible number of scores out of 800, Sodexo scored 789 versus the other one at 630, being Chartwells. So overall, they offered us the best value and best price, of course. At this point, we're recommending Sodexo will be awarded the contract for 17-18 school year. There's a lot of documents included in your packet because they were required. This process is quite lengthy. It started really in January for me, developing the RFP, bringing it to the board for approval in March, doing the bid walk, the analysis actually of the criteria, the RFP, And then it goes back to CDE, and they held it for, I think, just shy of 20-something days. They have approved it. They looked at everything we've done, the process we follow, going all the way back to, when they first initially looked at the draft contract and draft RFP. They didn't have a single question. So, that's a credit to our process and to you as a board for approving every step along the way. So they've given the contract that's for your action a blessing, and it would be executed upon your approval tonight.
This is an action item. Do I have any questions? Comments?
Move for approval?
Okay.
Second.
I have a motion, move for approval in a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'd just like to thank Sodexo for being here, but also Chartwells for putting in a very competitive bid. I think it's obviously very good for the district to have good, strong competition, but really got the best value from Sodexo. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. Okay. We're moving on to 10F, employment contract for Paul Winslow, Assistant Superintendent, Human Resources, effective July 1st, 2017. And Kim Felice, Director of Human Resources, will present the employment contract.
Good evening, board members and Dr. Flores. At a prior board meeting, you did appoint Paul Winslow as the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources effective July 1, 2017. As part of the process, I'm bringing forward his employment agreement to disclose the terms of his contract. That will be a 2-year contract with a yearly salary of $162,125, 22 days of vacation, 17 holidays, for a total of 222 work days. The contract is, our standard contract has been reviewed by our legal counsel. I'm asking that you approve the contract for Mr. Winslow effective July 1, 2017. Are there any questions regarding his contract?
A copy of the contract was included in our board
Yes,
packet this week,
yes.
so
Mhm.
we have that. We've been able to look at it.
Yeah.
Questions, comments, board members?
Yeah, it was my understanding that this was not the standard contract. The standard contract was the template or the basis for this, but this had modifications to it. So is that
This is-
correct or not correct?
No, this is the same contract that we have used in the past for the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources.
Okay, there was a typographical error then.
Okay.
In 16K, last sentence says he's supposed to work 4 hours per week.
Okay.
Four?
Fort, F-O-R-T.
All right. My apologies for that. This contract was reviewed here at Gilroy Unified and then sent to legal counsel that did some edits. So my apologies for having that error. We will correct the error.
And the other part that looked, at least I wasn't familiar with it or don't recall it from previous agreements, were paragraph 10, outside professional activities.
Has been.
That has been assumed.
And in the past, have our superintendents engaged in outside professional activities?
No,
Okay.
I haven't. I don't know about, I don't think any of us have.
Well, the assistant superintendents and superintendents are so busy, I don't see where.
I could never do that. Are you kidding?
That's why it kind of stood out to me. I said, really?
It was
How,
in-
when?
This contract was revised a number of years ago by our legal counsel, and that was added then. I guess it's a pretty common language from other districts, so it was added. Not that I think any of us have time to do anything but our jobs in the district.
Number 10, paragraph 10.
But it was a phrase that, or a clause that was added to mine and the assistant soups when she first got involved in these contracts. There were a number of changes made then, but this was one of them.
Well, this one says by prior approval of the superintendent, so you would have to approve it yourself, I guess.
Yes, nobody's ever asked, and I'd probably say no if they did, so we have too much to do here.
Okay, if you correct that typographical error, then it's fine with me.
Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion. This is an action item.
I will make a motion to correct the typographical error I mentioned and move approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously.
And thanks, Paul, for being here. Welcome to having your contract on the agenda every year. There's only a few of us that have that wonderful privilege of having it disclosed like this every year.
I held back too because it's your first year.
Yeah, we're looking forward to Paul joining us in early July. And even though we're sorry to see Stephanie go, she couldn't be here this evening, I think Paul's going to do a great job as a welcome addition to our cabinet.
Thank you.
You better.
Thank you, Kim. Okay, 10G, this item was first brought up by Trustee Good. This is the first reading of proposed board bylaw restrictions on district employment for former board members.
And our legal counsel did draft this language, and I shared it with Mark, I believe. Did you make any changes? I can't remember.
No, I didn't.
Yeah, I think.
No, it was fine as written. I mean, the rationale is essentially, I mean, as stated in the board briefing, that it would prevent a board member from using undue influence on a superintendent or another employee of the district to obtain a paid position. Obviously, we haven't had any problems in this district. However, other government agencies have. We have a lot of turnover occurring and projected both on the board and in top management positions. So this is as good a time as any to put it in policy and make sure that everything is transparent and above board.
Mhm.
Which is the reason I wanted to, I brought it before the board.
Right. So this is a first reading. If any other board members have questions or concerns.
Questions, comments? It's pretty clear, short and sweet.
All right, so
Okay,
we'll bring it back
great.
next time on the consent agenda for action.
That was actually already in the bylaws.
No?
You mean you don't have all those bylaws memorized?
Just this one I do now.
Okay, so we're at 11, board members' reports.
My only report is 4 open houses, and I've been sick for a week, so. That's a combat injury, I think.
Yes.
There's a bunch of somethings going around the district right now, unfortunately. Lot of
Exciting time in our
illness.
district. I know we've all been out a bunch,
Yes,
and
a
next
lot.
week is gonna be nuts, but.
I thought this week was going to be quiet, but it's been
Oh,
just
no.
as busy as,
Did the 4 days off improve the health of the students' population at all? As expected?
No, I didn't
Did
ask.
attendance go up at all?
I didn't
after
ask
those
that question.
4
We
days
could
of
look at our
sanitizing?
attendance.
I'm not sure.
The day after a holiday is not always a great day to look at our attendance, but. No, I was at ADB with James and didn't hear anything about attendance. There were sick kids, though. I was hearing a lot of coughing and sneezing, and that stomach virus is still going around.
so there's a couple of things I'd just like to pass down the line, this little advertisement. The BC and I actually both went to the FFA Awards Dinner and Banquet that was recently held at City Hall. It was very, very nicely done.
Heather was there too.
Oh, I'm sorry, Heather.
I sat right next to your Pat.
I spent too many nights out, I told you. Yes, Heather was there too. So, the FFA program has a very active Boosters Club, and there is going to be an open house on Saturday, June 17th, just in case, you're kind of in the routine of going somewhere every day. And you can go to this one too. It's from 10 to 3, and looks like a really fun event, so I'll just pass that down just in case any of you like
That's
to
at the
stop by.
school farm.
It's at the
I've
school
never
farm.
been, so I'm very excited.
Oh, it's
Oh,
great.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
Yes. Oh.
So then, the other little item I'd like to just pass down, you can just take a quick glance of this, is the architect's sketch, so to speak, of the new elementary school and how are they going to fit an elementary school into basically a triangular piece of land. So I just thought that you'd like to take a look. It's 12.7 acres. This is very preliminary, but it's interesting. And this is from the new elementary school committee. So, any other reports, comments?
I'll just
Trustee
put in a
Pace.
plug, another one for the Gilroy High Band and Choir Pops concert this Saturday, starting at 6, behind the theater is where it starts.
Oh, more importantly, the barbecue.
I think that's the barbecue's at 6, yeah.
Actually, Mr. Sousa said 5:30.
Oh,
okay, good.
I talked to him last night. about
okay,
that.
appreciate it. My wife would make sure I got there at the right time.
Okay, great. Then, do we have any referral items? We have our board calendar and future agenda items.
I'm sorry, I wanted to mention last night's events of people being recognized for their improved attendance. And I just thought it was so very well done, and wanted to thank Kim and the staff for really encouraging our employees to maintain their hours, and I'm hoping that continues.
Yes, that was,
And Sodexo for supporting it.
yes, thank you. That was really nice.
Very nice.
Linda and Heather and I were there. She was way down at the other end, but I saw her. Okay, so then Gina, again, in her attempt to keep us organized in our lives. Yes, we have our potential agenda items all the way through December.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's amazing.
I'm not sure if it necessarily go on future agenda items, but I would somehow like to get in the hopper a discussion for the new school site. There's that, the end of the triangle, there was talk about not developing the field, but it potentially could be developed. I think we should think about talking with the city and see if they're interested in some type of joint use deal where, we don't have the funds to build it, they build it, then it can be used by the city and
Do you
and the
mean
school
the
district.
top of the triangle?
Very top.
Right.
Field.
It was my understanding,
Field.
we didn't have the present capacity to develop that, but if we got into a joint use agreement with the city, maybe we could make it happen.
Yeah, I missed the last meeting, so I'm at a disadvantage, but we'll follow up. We can talk about it.
Yeah.
Plenty of people were at the meeting that can update me.
Yeah, and again, that sketch is very preliminary.
Sure.
Yeah.
They keep
Yeah.
trying to fit things in and
Yeah.
bringing it back to us, and,
And now's the time to start talking about it.
yep.
Sure. We do talk about the new school with the mayor and the city administrator in our monthly meetings, so they're well aware, mainly because I want to keep reminding them of the traffic, and needing that Valley Bunyan extension for this to work well. So, anyway, we can talk about that. When's the next meeting, Alvaro?
Next Tuesday?
Next Tuesday?
Right,
Next Tuesday.
yes,
Can,
trustee Pacetto.
since not all of us are on that new school planning committee, can we get an update either on Sunday or maybe at
Sure.
a board meeting?
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah, maybe at a board meeting to make sure you all know where, we've got another meeting Tuesday, maybe we
Just for
can.
the highlights, maybe every other month?
Sure, that's a good idea.
Yes, I'm sorry, trustee Rosso.
Yes, I sit on a task force with the South County United for Health that focuses on the walk to school events. And they had as a guest speaker, Mark Fenton, who's a nationally known consultant that did a presentation about walkability in communities. And we actually did a walk audit Supervisor Wasserman was there, and people representing South County, all over South County. And one of the things they talked about was making communities walkable communities, and we talked a little bit about our school situation. Cheryl Gilroy was there in the meeting as well. And they offered to take a look at doing a walk audit at our new school site as to, in other words, to look at it for accessibility so that it's not just car-focused access, and also even the issues that we would be having around the new housing development on the railroad tracks, talking about options. And this was not just about the school's role. It was about the need to have a sit-down with the city and to have a conversation about just those issues, in other words, so that the focus isn't everything about the cars. There's actually strategies that focus about creating walkable environments around the schools that we have and looking at areas. They really came up with some great ideas. We walked on the city. We actually did a walkthrough on Morgan Hill. Very, very interesting. As they talked about different areas, and the city planners were there, and representatives from the city, the mayor, and there was a lot of talk about there's a lot we can do, and particularly if we sit down with the city and maybe get more engagement at that level as we talk about the planning of the new school site, which is going to be a big challenge. We all know that. And we know we have that new housing unit that's coming up, so that's another area. So at any rate, I figure I'd throw that in, and we might look at having some more conversations at the facility level as well to bring it forward. I also did want to make mention briefly that besides the graduations, which were really great, that I did attend the Brownell Pop concert and the send-off for Tom Brosine and the choir. It was really a nice event and a big surprise. Students really came all out to show their appreciation for his 30, I forgot how many years, 37 or years of service or something like that. So thank you.
And I was at Solorzano the next night, and it was really great to see. I know a lot of high school students came back to see Mr. Rosine and say goodbye.
I believe Ms. Paceno has something to talk about.
Pat and I served food, and we have a great respect for what food service does at Brownell's Bruin Fest. And it was really fun. And the one thing that impressed us both as we handed out chips and gorgeous fresh strawberries from LJB Farms was our students were so incredibly polite. I mean, there were please and thank yous almost, unanimously. They were fantastic. And I only served 6th and 7th graders, so I can't say that about the 8th graders. But Pat was there for all of them, and she said they were equally as polite, so that's a good thing. But that was really impressive because it was great being around.
Yeah. And the other good thing, piece of good news, they wanted strawberries more than they wanted chips.
Absolutely.
Go figure.
I was the first kid that said no, he didn't want chips. I almost fell down. And I thought, okay, and they were tortilla chips. And I would say probably 15 to 20% of them turned down chips. So we're doing something right.
So we should say thank you to the Bozo family who basically did this.
Yes.
Greg Bozo and Jean Sakahara.
Sam and Judy Bozo.
A lot of volunteers from the community came in to help serve, and it was really nicely done. Yes.
Regarding the calendar, I want to tell the public and remind you guys, I won't be here at the next meeting as I will be on my way to Costa Rica with the Gilroy High Chamber Singers.
And I have a chamber farewell sing or something like 2 days before, like the 13th or something on my calendar?
They only tell me the day of.
Okay.
Farewell concert, look, there it is, Tuesday the 13th.
Yeah.
My wife thinks it exists.
I don't know where it is, but that's all I have, is Tuesday the 13th.
I will make sure that information gets to you all.
Thank you.
Oh, I forgot to announce. The next regular meeting of the Board of Education will be held on Thursday, June 15th. Closed session will be at 5:30, followed by open session at 7. The agenda will be available on the district's website by 5 p.m. on Friday, June 9th, 2017. With that, the meeting is adjourned.